Your cholesterol does not predict whether you will be healthy at 80. Your blood pressure does not predict it either. I spent 43 years at the Mayo Clinic studying why some people live long, healthy lives and others do not. And I can tell you right now that almost everything you have been told about longevity is either incomplete or flat out wrong. I have a PhD in public health. I have published over 150 papers on aging and mortality. I have visited every single blue zone on Earth to study people who routinely live past 100. And I'm going to tell you the 10 real reasons some people live much longer than others. Not the reasons you read about in magazines. Not the reasons supplement companies want you to believe. The actual reasons, backed by decades of research on millions of people. I'm telling you this because I have watched too many of my friends die early. I have watched too many brilliant colleagues spend their lives studying health and then make choices that killed them. I do not want to watch you make the same mistakes. The first reason, and this is the most important thing I will tell you today, is the quality of your relationships. Not how many friends you have on social media, not how often you go to parties. The actual depth and quality of your connections with other human beings. There is a study out of Harvard that has been running for 85 years. It started in 1938 and has followed the same people and now their children for nearly a century. It is the longest study of human life ever conducted. And after all that time, after all that data, the single strongest predictor of who lived longest and healthiest was not their diet, not their exercise, not their genetics. It was the quality of their relationships at age 50. The people who were most satisfied in their relationships at 50 were the healthiest at 80. Their relationship satisfaction was a better predictor of their physical health than their cholesterol levels. I will say that again because I need you to understand this. Your relationships predict your health better than your cholesterol. Social isolation is as harmful to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is worse than obesity. It is worse than physical inactivity. Loneliness increases your risk of dementia by 50%, heart disease by 29%, stroke by 32%. When you feel isolated, your body interprets that as a survival threat. Your immune system goes into overdrive. Your inflammation levels rise and stay elevated. Your cortisol stays high. Your sleep suffers. Your cardiovascular system takes damage. I learned this the hard way. My wife Margaret died 8 years ago. We were married 61 years. When she died, I wanted to die too. I understood intellectually what the research showed about widowhood and mortality, but experiencing it was different. In the first year after she passed, I could feel myself declining. My walking slowed. My appetite disappeared. I stopped seeing friends. And then I remembered everything I had spent my career studying, and I forced myself to do the opposite of what I wanted. I joined a walking group. I made myself have breakfast with friends twice a week. I called my children more often. I reached out to old colleagues. It was hard. It felt artificial at first, but the research was right. Within 2 years, I was healthier than I had been in the final years of Margaret's illness, when I was consumed with caregiving. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Invest in your relationships now. Call your parents today. Make plans with friends. Show up for people. The quality of your connections at 50 will determine your health at 80 more than anything else you do. The second reason some people live longer is purpose. Having a reason to wake up in the morning. The Japanese call it ikigai. It is not about being productive or achieving goals. It is about feeling that your life has meaning and direction. A study following nearly 7,000 people for 14 years found that those with the highest sense of purpose had a 15% lower risk of death from any cause. Another analysis of 10 studies found that purpose in life was associated with a 17% reduction in mortality. The mechanism appears to be partly behavioral. People with purpose take better care of themselves, but also biological. Having purpose reduces inflammation markers and improves immune function. I have watched this in my own life and in the lives of everyone I have studied. The people who retire and have nothing to do, no projects, no interest, no contribution to make, they decline fast. The people who have something that gets them out of bed, whether it is gardening or volunteering or building furniture or caring for grandchildren, they stay sharp and vital well into their 90s. After I retired, I kept consulting for years. When that ended, I started making furniture. I am terrible at it, frankly, but I have a project. I have something that requires me to think, to plan, to solve problems. That matters more than you might think. The third reason is movement, but not the kind you are probably thinking of. Not gym memberships and structured workouts. I am talking about constant, low-level movement distributed throughout your day. When I visited Okinawa, one of the original blue zones, I noticed that people there do not exercise in the way Americans think of exercise. They do not run marathons or lift weights. What they do is move constantly. They sit on the floor instead of chairs, which means they perform the equivalent of a body weight squat 30 or 40 times a day, just getting up and down. They walk to the market, they garden, they clean. They are never sedentary for long. The research backs this up. A study tracking over 17,000 people found that those who took more than 7,000 steps per day had a 50 to 70% lower risk of death compared to those taking fewer than 4,000 steps. This was not about intensity or heart rate targets. It was simply about moving throughout the day, rather than sitting for hours and then trying to make up for it with one intense workout. Modern life has engineered movement out of existence. You sit to commute. You sit to work. You sit to eat. You sit to relax. The average office worker moves for less than 2 hours in a 16-hour waking window. That is catastrophic for your health. Build movement into your life so that it happens automatically. Walk to get your coffee. Take the stairs. Stand during phone calls. Make movement unavoidable rather than optional. The fourth reason, and this one is not talked about enough, is muscle. Not for aesthetics, for survival. Grip strength is one of the best predictors of mortality we have. A study of nearly 140,000 people across 17 countries found that for every 5-kilogram decrease in grip strength, there was a 16% increase in the risk of death from any cause. Grip strength was a stronger predictor of cardiovascular death than systolic blood pressure. Let me repeat that. How hard you can squeeze a dynamometer predicts your survival better than your blood pressure. Why does this matter? Because grip strength is a proxy for total muscle mass and overall physiological function. After age 30, you lose 3 to 5% of your muscle mass per decade if you are sedentary. That accelerates after 60. By 80, many people have lost 30 to 40% of the muscle they had in their prime. This is not just about weakness. Muscle is a metabolic organ. It regulates your blood sugar. It secretes anti-inflammatory molecules. It stores amino acids your body needs during illness. When you lose muscle, you lose resilience. I measure my grip strength every week. I've been doing it for 20 years. When I see it declining, I know I need to do more resistance exercise. At 95, I can still open jars and carry groceries. That is not an accident. It is deliberate maintenance. The fifth reason is metabolic stability. This is different from weight or BMI. You can be thin and metabolically broken. You can be overweight and metabolically healthy. What matters is how your body handles glucose. When you eat something, your blood sugar rises. A healthy metabolism handles this smoothly. Insulin is released, glucose is cleared from the bloodstream, everything returns to normal. An unhealthy metabolism spikes wildly. Blood sugar shoots up, crashes down, and over time this creates insulin resistance, which is one of the earliest detectable signs of metabolic disease. High insulin levels drive fat storage, promote inflammation, raise blood pressure, and accelerate the hardening of your arteries. A study following 3,000 people for more than a decade found that those in the highest quartile of insulin resistance had more than double the risk of cardiovascular death compared to those in the lowest quartile, even after adjusting for weight, cholesterol, and blood pressure. You can eat the exact same meal as someone else and have completely different glucose responses. This has been shown repeatedly with continuous glucose monitors. Some people handle certain foods smoothly, while others spike dramatically. The solution is not obsessing over calories. It is building a metabolism that responds predictably to food. That means prioritizing protein and fiber, which stabilize blood sugar. It means strength training, which improves insulin sensitivity. It means avoiding the ultra-processed foods that create glucose chaos. The sixth reason is circadian discipline. Your body does not just respond to what you eat and how you move. It responds to when you do those things. Your circadian rhythm is the internal 24-hour clock running every cell in your body. It controls hormone release, DNA repair, the clearance of waste from your brain, and the timing of your immune response. When this rhythm is disrupted, everything suffers. A study of over 400,000 people found that those with disrupted circadian rhythms had significantly higher rates of mood disorders, cancer, cardiovascular disease, and early death. The effect size was comparable to smoking. Shift workers die earlier, even when diet and exercise are controlled. Night owls die earlier. People with chaotic sleep schedules die earlier. This is not a lifestyle penalty. It is a biological one. Glucose tolerance worsens as the day goes on. Eating the same meal at 8 in the evening produces significantly higher blood sugar spikes than eating it at 8 in the morning. Your pancreas is programmed to secrete less insulin after dark. Eating large meals late at night forces your body to process glucose when it is least equipped to do so. I go to bed at the same time every night. I wake at the same time every morning. I eat my largest meal in the middle of the day. I get bright light exposure in the first hour after waking. These are not luxuries. They are biological necessities. The seventh reason is not stress avoidance, but stress recovery. Everyone thinks the goal is to eliminate stress. It is not. The goal is to recover from it. The longest living people do not live stress-free lives. Many of them have experienced tremendous hardship. What distinguishes them is their ability to return from activation to rest. Their nervous systems are flexible. They can ramp up when needed and down-regulate when the threat passes. Heart rate variability, which measures the variation in time between heartbeats, is one of the best measures of this capacity. Higher variability means a more adaptable nervous system. Low variability means you are stuck in chronic activation. A meta-analysis of over 40 studies found that low heart rate variability predicts cardiovascular mortality independent of other risk factors. Chronic stress flattens your cortisol curve. Normally, cortisol is high in the morning to wake you up and low in the evening to help you sleep. Chronic stress keeps it elevated all day and night. This increases inflammation, impairs immune function, and accelerates cellular aging. Researchers measuring telomere length, a marker of biological age, found that chronically stressed people have significantly shorter telomeres, equivalent to 10 years of additional aging. The key is that stress must end. Your system must receive the all-clear signal. Exercise does this well. A hard workout activates your stress response. Then, when it ends, your recovery systems take over. That cycle trains resilience. Breathing exercises, especially exhaling longer than you inhale, directly activate your vagus nerve and shift you toward recovery. Cold exposure works similarly. I lost my wife. I lost most of my closest friends. I have experienced enormous stress. What saves me is that I have rituals that signal safety. My morning walk, my breakfast with friends, my evening reading. These are not indulgences. They are survival strategies. The eighth reason is inflammation control. Aging is not driven by time alone. It is driven by biological friction, the slow accumulation of damage at the cellular level. There is a term now in the research literature called inflammaging, chronic low-grade inflammation that quietly dismantles your physiology over decades. This is not the inflammation you feel after an injury. That is acute and healthy. This is systemic and silent. It drives cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, arthritis. All of them have chronic inflammation as a core mechanism. The markers for this are molecules like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. In a healthy person, these spike briefly during infection and return to baseline. In someone with chronic inflammation, they stay elevated for years. CRP above 3 milligrams per liter is associated with significantly higher cardiovascular risk. What drives this inflammation? Ultra-processed foods, chronic sleep deprivation, sedentary behavior, social isolation, chronic stress, obesity, particularly visceral fat which secretes inflammatory cytokines. Poor oral health, gum disease, is a huge source of systemic inflammation. Smoking and alcohol. What suppresses it? Whole foods rich in polyphenols and omega-3 fatty acids. Regular movement, strength training, quality sleep, stress recovery, and interestingly, deep social connection. Which brings us back to where we started. Everything connects. The ninth reason is not what you eat, but how you eat. I have been to Okinawa, Sardinia, Ikaria, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, and Loma Linda in California. These are the places where people live longest. Their diets vary enormously. Some eat meat, some do not. Some drink wine, some abstain. What they share is not specific foods, but patterns of eating. They eat together. Meals are social events, not solitary fuel stops. They eat slowly. They stop eating before they are completely full. The Okinawans have a phrase, hara hachi bu, which means eat until you are 80% full. They eat their largest meals earlier in the day when metabolic function is highest. They do not snack constantly between meals. In all these places, ultra-processed food is rare or non-existent. Not because people are virtuous, but because these foods simply were not part of their food cultures. When processed foods are introduced to these populations, their health advantages disappear within a generation. This has been documented repeatedly. I do not obsess over specific foods. I eat what my grandmother would have recognized as food. I do not eat things that can sit on a shelf for 35 years without rotting. I eat with friends when I can. I stop before I am stuffed. These patterns matter more than any specific nutrient. The 10th reason, and this is the one nobody wants to talk about, is making peace with mortality. I have studied thousands of people who lived into their 90s and hundreds. The ones who thrived were not the ones who feared death or fought against it or tried to pretend it was not coming. They were the ones who accepted it as part of life and structured their remaining time accordingly. This acceptance is not resignation or giving up. It is clarity. When you know your time is limited, you stop wasting it on things that do not matter. You repair relationships you have let lapse. You say things you have been putting off saying. You stop postponing the things that bring you meaning. I think about death every day, not morbidly, practically. I ask myself whether I am using this day well, whether there is anything I would regret leaving undone. This has made me more present, not less, more engaged with life, not less. Every friend I have from my generation is dead. My wife is dead. Most of my colleagues are dead. I have watched dozens of people I loved decline and disappear. What I learned from watching them is that the ones who went well, who stayed vital and engaged and at peace until the end, were the ones who had accepted where they were heading. They were not pretending they would live forever. They were not terrified. They were simply living as fully as they could for as long as they could. I am 95. I know how this story ends. I could have 5 more years or 5 more months. What I have is today. And today I will walk my 2 miles. I will call my daughter. I will work on the bookshelf I am building for my grandson. I will eat a good meal with real food. I will read something interesting. I will go to bed at the same time I always do. These are not complicated things. None of what I have told you is complicated. You do not need supplements or biohacks or expensive interventions. You need to invest in your relationships. You need a reason to wake up. You need to move your body throughout the day. You need to maintain your muscle. You need to keep your blood sugar stable. You need to respect your circadian rhythm. You need to recover from stress rather than letting it become chronic. You need to control inflammation. You need to eat like a human being instead of a garbage disposal. And you need to make peace with the fact that your time here is limited. I spent 43 years studying this. I have read thousands of papers. I have analyzed data from millions of people. And what I can tell you with absolute certainty is that the people who live longest and healthiest are not doing anything exotic. They are simply doing the basic things consistently, decade after decade, while everyone else looks for shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. There is just showing up every day and treating your body and your relationships like they matter, because they do. They are all you have. I hope something I have said today helps you live a longer and better life. That is all I wanted to accomplish. Thank you for listening to an old man talk for a while.